in my head I was like, oh, Jesus is about to say, no, bro, you signed up for the cause, bro. Ain't no wedding coming in your future.
That was a hard scene to watch.
Yeah,
that was really hard.
It's
just because it was way too close to home for me.
Yeah.
And it's just conversations that I've had with the Lord, and
this is the first time that you at least see the apostles think about the fact that they might die for this cause. We're back, Kevin. The Chosen explained here. Kevin Eskew alongside myself, John Simmons, here to explain Season 3, Episode 2 of The Chosen. We just saw it in theaters. This is a spoiler-rific review, so if you have not seen this episode, turn back now, right?
Yeah, don't watch this.
So let's talk about Season 2. We saw back-to-back in the theaters just the other day. Season 2 continues where episode 2 picks up where episode 1 left off, where they've sort of separated. The disciples have separated, and we're seeing all these side storylines. We see Thomas and Rama are trying to get married, and man, they spent a lot of time talking about that. What do you think?
They did. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, I hate to say unnecessarily so, but at the same time, it almost felt that way. I think that it was good. What other character developments do they have? I mean, that's really, at least for right now.
Well, you get
Thomas hasn't had any real major.
But they've alluded to their marriage in the previous.
That's
seasons.
what I was saying. That's why almost unnecessarily so, because it's no surprise unless you're really daft and not really paying attention to Season 2.
Yeah, but 3 or 4 scenes.
You knew that he loved her. And
sure, of course. I'm saying so. Like, let's get. So
right.
What are they alluding to in the episode 2? There's several scenes where Tamar and Mary are like, "Oh, you like him or whatever," and
sure. Girl talk.
And you even see the boy talk. Thomas is talking to Mr. Zebedee. Oh, I knew you would like that girl. Blah blah. I knew this was that. And the boys celebrate and give him a hug when he's like, "I want to ask her to marry me." And then of course you see him ask Jesus for permission. And I in my head I was like, "Oh, Jesus is about to say." No, bro. You signed up for the cause, bro. Ain't no wedding coming in your future.
Well, those. So if you're trying to figure out or what maybe the writers are doing with the character development with some of them, so the Zebedee and John and Thomas.
Yeah.
This and I think that so James's reaction is like, you guys talk like you've met my dad, like you're talking like inside jokes, and and I'm like, and I felt like James, and maybe that was intentional, because that was a revelation, a story development or character development. These two have somehow bonded or become buddies off screen.
Yeah.
And so James is, I guess, maybe the picture of also us as the audience, like, Big what James, you guys are. Big James is like, what, you two are friends now? What, you talked to my father? Like, you guys have your own like inside jokes now? Like, I don't know what you're all, and with Dad, like, I don't know what you're all talking about. And I was kind of like, I'm like, where did this come from? Like, this is or where where are you going with this? So in regards to character development, that was an interesting spin that I did not expect. The other flip side is, and I totally expected, and wasn't really much of a character development, talking about Rama, wanting to marry, and the whole relationship with Thomas was not a big surprise, was not really great revelation of character development. It was more just a confirmation, or we're moving this part of the story along, that maybe we should expect a wedding at the end of Season 3, maybe.
Possibly. So what did you feel about the we want to get pregnant storyline? So Peter and
I like
Eden,
that.
he comes home from being with Jesus, and he's like, all right, let's make a baby. It's time.
Yeah.
He tells her. And so so now this is a thread. And again, I feel like I talked about it in the last episode where we talked about how religious people might get offended when extra biblical storylines are introduced, and because this is the main character and they're talking about having a baby, Eden's not, but obviously Eden's not even mentioned, so it's not like it's this is some sort of a, we've already added characters to Peter's life, so I guess a baby isn't necessarily the end all. But
okay, so let's talk about this. So there's scenes where they're eating lunch. Do you think they ate lunch even though it's not in the Bible?
Hey,
Do you think that we can't have them eating lunch? That's not in the Bible talking about eating lunch. Well, what about taking a nap or getting a cold or getting a splinter in their face?
It's very much like the scene where Atticus is like, oh, he took a leak or he took a
right,
nap,
yeah, he's
It's
relieving himself. He's
how much do I have to tell you?
right, yeah. So this whole so to say it's unbiblical that they could be talking about having a family.
I said extra biblical.
Extra biblical, whatever that's one and the same to religious, the religious spirit, religion. Oh, that's not in Scripture. We cannot have it. Well, you cannot put that on the big screen. That's you're
they talk about poop in the Bible.
You're putting words in his mouth. It's perfectly plausible. In fact, if you were to say otherwise, I would say that would be more a blasphemy or more inaccurate to say that, well, Peter, I'm sure he never slept with his wife. He was so holy and a disciple of Jesus, or he never wanted to have children, or he never wanted to just have alone time to be with it. Come on. These are all like real life scenarios. These
I appreciate.
Real
that's why I brought it up.
And that's so I just
guys would want to get married. Guys would want to have babies if they were married. Like these are natural things that would happen, and they would happen in the course of a ministry.
But to immediately let our minds go to like, oh, who's going to get mad at that? Like that's to me that's so absurd to even get mad at. I don't even want to like give those people any acknowledgement.
Maybe it's not happening. Maybe
it's gotta be. I mean,
a figment of my imagination.
I think Dallas and the writers aren't even concerned or waste their time on editing themselves and stuff like that, because that's what makes part of The Chosen great, is that the characters, and they should be relatable because they were real men and real women. These are real people with real life problems, real life issues, real life struggles and addictions and sins and personalities and offenses and all the junk that comes with life. And
all of it carries into their new life with Christ too.
Right.
So let's talk about some of that. So some of the storylines that are brought up in this episode 2, you see that Simon, the former zealot, Simon the zealot, they remind him a lot of times that that's not who he is anymore. Right. You are no longer a zealot, and you weren't a zealot the minute you dropped your knife in the Jordan River. Atticus tells him, and so but he has people from his old order chasing after him. You see some sort of shadowy.
Well, now he's a traitor, son of the zealot. That. Back then, if you didn't follow orders, it was maybe the equivalent of today. If you were, you were AOL from the military, you were given orders to go in and war and to kill the enemy, and you dropped your gun and you abandoned the military, you would be facing serious charges. And but this may not be a legit, just as an example. But that now there's a price on his head because he's betrayed his brotherhood by following Jesus.
And so he is confronted by Atticus, who they call cohort.
Cohort.
I can't even say this word correctly. Cohort in the show many times, and I was like, "What is this going on?" So we looked it up. It means Roman soldier, Roman legion, essentially. Just a member of the Roman legion, and so
like equivalent of maybe calling somebody a colonel, lieutenant, or a general.
Yeah. So it was a title, and not a name. It was a title. For those of you who are wondering, like, I thought his name was Aurelius or whatever. It's like, it's like, no, it's a cohort. That's
not
his
his
title.
name. That was his
title. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's what Quintus was calling him several times.
Referring to him.
And so cohort meets Simon the Zealot up on a rooftop. We thought that he was the one who was chasing him. It was not, because he's there. He's there to say, hey, you need to get these guys out of town. And why didn't you go through with the murder? He confronts him openly, says, hey, look, I know who you are. I know where you came from. I know why you were in town when I met you, and a miracle happened. And he said, well, you call it a miracle. Like, talking about Simon in the storyline. Simon's brother was the man at the stirring well that got healed by Jesus. Pick up your mat and walk. And so,
well, let's back up for a second.
Okay.
So we've been talking about a lot of heavy on, the character development on, the disciples and those that are following Jesus. Yeah. But I do believe even so and if you haven't watched it yet, you can watch, our review of episode 1, season 3. But in that episode 1 of season 3, you've got Gaius and your cohort.
Yep. Atticus
on their horses watching the sermon on a mount. And I think that I'm very curious and excited on what the writers of Chosen have planned for those two characters, because they seem to be on the side of Jesus. They seem to be very curious, like they're So Atticus going in and he's ready to set up. And he even tells Simon on the roof, "I was going to kill you." Yeah. Like it was going to, and he knew it. He's like, I saw you. You let me in." And he's like, "Yo, they were both. They both were calling each other out on like, I had you pegged. Oh no, I had you pegged. Oh no, I saw you.
Why'd you
first.
Let me in the city?"
Yeah. He's like, "I'm gonna let you know that I saw you before I even went in the city, and I knew you let me in, and I knew you were gonna try to kill me, and it was gonna be this whole this showdown." And they're both like almost. And I thought that was a very interesting and fun scene to watch. Them both kind of wink and and kind of whose sword is bigger type thing, and at the same time they're like almost a mutual respect, like, but we're frenemies almost. We were enemies, now we're friends, or we don't know.
It's the reveal. Friends. It's like it's the first time they're really talking, and so it's confusing as to like what's the motivation and intention behind this conversation, And I appreciate the confusion because it's like we're building characters, right? And so we talked about last season. We talked about how we might see Gaius or maybe even Atticus become a follower of Jesus in some way, or maybe they get turned around in some way. And you're seeing it both really fast in season 3. Gaius is sort of like he's meditating on some stuff he heard at the Sermon on the Mount, and Atticus. And it was interesting because the scene where Gaius has to go tell Quintus that people are camped around the city.
Yeah.
And he goes with Atticus, and he tells him, well, they were at the Sermon on the Mount, and he goes, well, was it just a normal sermon? And they're like, yeah, it's just a normal sermon. And he's like, well, what was said? And Atticus intentionally said things that were not said. If you didn't catch up on that, he was like, it was just normal sermon gobbledygook. But this is not what that guy believes.
Well, but he didn't misquote him. He just said, "Oh, it's just your typical stuff." And he's like, "But I haven't heard a lot of sermons, so I can't really say."
Yeah,
and
but you know that he took something out of it.
They both played it down, and that's why. Yeah, it was very intentional. Like I don't think there's any real confusion at all as to what's going on, even with his relationship. His new.
But do you find it interesting that both guys are getting touched? Like you would think that.
Well, I mean, I find it
in the show, like to have two enemy characters, or two maybe non-disciple characters.
Yeah.
It's like you only have so many people who can play the antagonist in a show like this, right? The devil's not in this show, so it's like we need some antagonist to sort of run. We have some of that. In the Pharisees.
Was clearly Quintus and the Pharisees. I mean, Quintus is going to be the Roman side of things, and then eventually Pontius Pilate. And you're going to see the whole trial and the culmination.
But to see both of his main sidekicks, Quintus' sidekicks.
Yeah, that's why I'm a little surprised, but not surprised. Because there were, even throughout the Bible, there were a few Gentiles that had encounters with Jesus. There was a female Gentile that came to Jesus asking for a miracle, and then there was the centurion, who we know,
who might be Gaius in the show,
who could be, that had this great faith that one of the, in fact, if you read that the two people that shocked Jesus the most with their faith were not Jews but Gentiles.
Yeah, that's right.
They're the ones that touched him the most and made him like, if you can shock God and surprise him, it was the Gentiles that surprised him with their great faith. And so we know that there are that interaction. And in fact, he alluded to when he, in season 2, what we can get into, where he is going to send out the disciples 2 by 2.
Yep.
He specifically instructs them to go to the Jews, because the gospel is to go to the Jews first and then to the Gentiles, and says the Gentiles will come later. I don't know. That might be a little extra biblical. I think as far as, I don't know if that's theologically, I think most... if you get into the book of Acts, I think it was a surprise to most of the disciples that the gospel was going to go to the Gentiles.
Yes.
So whether Jesus actually told them that in his 3-year ministry, I highly doubt it. But because unless it just slipped their mind that Jesus once told them, "Hey, you're going to go. You're going to go to the Gentiles eventually." Like, I don't think they really saw that. It was a mystery that was revealed to Paul. Saul, who turned into Paul, that was his ministry, and that was a whole. He even says this was the mystery of the ages that no one knew that this was God's plan all along to bring in both the Jews and the Gentiles under one family. But anyway,
so we got both these guys, and we don't know where they're going. We don't know if they're going to start following Jesus, if they're going to cause some issues. Like I don't want to come out and say I predict it, but because it could go anyway. You know, but
how do you feel about that? Like, do you like that, or would you rather them be enemies and then they're?
Well, I feel like we're in a TV show.
We're
in a TV show, so it's like we got to stretch out some. We're in season 3. I don't expect the bad guys to turn good in the end of in the beginning of the 3rd season. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
It's like you expect the bad guy to sort of become good, or maybe
what made him bad? Why would you say they're bad guys?
Because they're Roman. I mean, they're Roman Gentiles who don't believe in God, who don't believe in this is the Messiah. By definition, they're heathen. So by definition, they're also coming against some of the things that Jesus is doing. They're having to walk, So it's like not evil in the fact that they're trying to get after Jesus in some of the ways that some of the Pharisees are trying to prevent or stop some of the things that Jesus have done.
Yeah.
But
so I'll play devil's advocate as far as the idea that they're bad guys. Like, I get what you're saying, and that it's easy to kind of think of that alliance. But here's Gaius, who's just doing his job. He's responsible for looking after the guy that collects taxes. He hates his job. At the beginning of season 1, he's just like, come on, Matthew. These people want to, but he's impatient, and he's clearly like on a Monday morning, like, oh God, I got to do this again. I got to babysit you. But do we call him a bad guy for that, or is he just another typical guy doing what he's told to make a living for his family, and he's a Roman, and this is what he's doing? Because he could clearly be doing things really bad, like hurting people intentionally or stealing from the money that Matthew is collecting. But he seemed like then they get, which I love watching that relationship where it goes from season 1 and 2 where he begins to care about Matthew to now at the beginning of season 3, here's Gaius on his horse and he's looking at Jesus. He's hearing Jesus, and he's this like almost jaw, even though his jaw literally didn't drop. Yeah. He had that jaw dropping look, and he's walking in this daze, like thinking and meditating, and he can't get the sermon out of his head. Of course not. It's implied, obviously, by the actor.
My point is that it happened to both Atticus and Gaius.
No, I get your point.
Why does it have to be both guys?
Yeah. I'm finding that this character development that is interesting is that now we've shifted where you're seeing a new character development, not just in the disciples, but them. And as far as Atticus, again, he's coming to just because people are murdering zealots, which are just as bad in a way. I mean, they're committing murder. They're killing men that are just doing their jobs. They're Roman soldiers, and they're stabbing them. They're secretly finding them in dark alleyways, and this happened, and they saw them as occupiers, which they were, and they hated them with a bloody hatred and a murdering heart, and they wanted them dead, and so here Atticus is coming to try to stop that and squash these band of Jews that are murdering other Roman citizens. So do we call them evil? Like, you know what I mean? It's just an interesting take on, the perspective of maybe the Jews at the times, but put ourselves in a Roman soldiers as you and I both Gentiles, born Gentiles. We don't have Jewish lineage in our family as far as we know. Yep. So we would have been one of them. We would have been on the outs. We would have been born in Rome in that time as not in the Jewish circle. The Jews would not have had come over to our house for dinner. We would not have been allowed in their synagogues. We would have. And so that's just like an interesting, history and to think about. But I like the fact that we're watching the impact of two Gentiles that are outside of the Jewish culture being impacted by Jesus, and even the people like Gaius and his relationship with Matthew, that he befriended a Jew, which was unheard of in that time for a Roman soldier to be friends with a Jewish man would just be. That would be not normal.
In the theme of antagonist, I also want to talk briefly about Yusuf brings the scribe, and he's got a new administrative assistant. He's got a new secretary. This guy, I forget the guy's name, but he's like, I got a secret safe where we put all documents to cool off. And he brings in the document Yusuf does that he wrote about the Sermon on the Mount and what was said there. Do you think that this administrative assistant has a larger role?
Is that what he is?
He said he's basically a secretary. Is how he describes his.
I thought he was in charge of handling all the documents, like he was higher up than Yusuf. I don't think that he was underneath Yusuf. I think he was over Yusuf, but I could be wrong. I don't understand a lot of the Jewish, back then, the hierarchy.
The vibe that I got, I'll speak for myself. So the vibe that I got is that he was basically the secretary. He was a
librarian.
Yes, essentially. Yeah.
Okay, could be. I have no idea.
And so, do you feel just without knowing anything, that he's got a bigger role to play? That he's there for nefarious? Because it had this undertone of like, oh, this guy's up to no good, in my opinion.
That's how I felt. Like it was an interesting and strange interaction.
Yeah,
I couldn't tell because Yusuf definitely seemed like he was moved by it and wasn't sure what to write down, because I think that he was excited in his spirit about what he heard.
I feel like this guy's going to burn that scroll and
or read it and turn in Yusuf as I don't know. Yeah. It's but he clearly thinks this guy's on his side.
Yeah.
He clearly was like, I didn't seal it so you could read it.
Yeah.
I wanted to get, maybe he wants to secretly get his opinion.
And they made the point to put the subtitle on the screen that it was a letter
to Nicodemus.
Yeah, because
who also a sympathizer of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And maybe already known sympathizer of Jesus' ministry. And
so they're stirring up the possible threads here to some of the issues that they're going to have, besides just regular persecution from the Romans, the actual, character persecution that they're going to come under from antagonists in the show.
Well, I think that's, if you're going to get into it's really a very political, that day and the age, but with the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and I think that if you're going to get into the political intrigue and how they conspire to crucify Jesus and arrest him and all this is really the maybe the story that he's trying to set, and how all this works, and how that even in today's age we see this, and it can be unfortunately within denominations and with even in our own Washington D.C., all the politics and it seems to be a very slimy, a very manipulative kind of industry, or industry is not the right word, but environment. And so I think that that's part of what maybe he's trying to flesh out, and trying to maybe start exploring more on the politics of the age, and how some were maybe not always against Jesus, but some were definitely threatened. Their power, their authority clearly was threatened, which is why they wanted to kill him.
Yeah. So we see these threads start to get pulled. Another thread that gets brought is them being called out to go out and spread the gospel. So Jesus calls a meeting. They've been separated for, since basically the beginning of episode 1, and now they're towards the end of episode 2. Jesus sits them in a room, and he explains from Matthew 10, you're going to go out 2 by 2. You're going to go spread the gospel. If you don't have no peace, knock it off your sandals and walk away. And so he starts. It's a lot of scripture in that particular scene, at least until the questions start, Kevin. And so the questions start like, well, I don't know if we're ready for this. What do you mean? What do you mean cast out demons? What do you mean? Step on scorpions? What do you mean? And so, like you said, the questions that the disciples have. And Jesus in the scene says, you've been given authority to go do this. So he gives them the authority, which is very important as well, because they weren't able to do this on their own. You see in other scriptures, like, we tried to cast out demons, well, it didn't work. Well, was your faith big enough? So there's like the sons of Sceva, and when they're trying to cast out demons, like, just because you've seen it done doesn't mean you're able to do it, And so God's giving them the authority to go and spread the gospel and spread the message. And he also talks about the persecution that comes up. And this is the first time that you at least see the apostles think about the fact that they might die for this cause, and you see on their faces great acting with these guys, being presented with, oh my gosh, like we hadn't really thought about that until right now. Like this could cause us, maybe Simon the Zealot, he's already in that sort of line of work, but the rest of them, you know, like I was a fisherman yesterday and now I might be dying because I started following this rabbi around town, you know. So it was a very powerful scene, a very loving scene. It had the line that you appreciated that we talked about in the trailer review. You know, I don't need you to feel anything to do great things. It was mentioned. And so
well, he says, I've already given you the authorities as well. I don't feel any different.
Yeah.
I don't feel well, I don't need you to feel anything to do great and it is so that is that's I hope people catch it. I hope people learn from that, because that is a big spiritual truth. It's the whole conversation is very much like maybe new believers, or that believers that maybe haven't been taught that they have the authority to actually lay hands on the sick and see them recover or cast out demons. Unfortunately, not all churches
not just that part of it though, but the other part that I like, they were like, well, what are we supposed to say? What are we supposed to say when we go to these towns? And he's like, just say things you've heard me say. Do what I do. This is what he told Judas when Judas, he said, just imitate me. Just do what I'm doing, and you will pick it up, you know. And so he says, just go. So basically, go repeat what you heard at the Sermon on the Mount and these other towns. Go repeat what I've taught you about other things. You know, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. That's what he says, you know, from Scripture. Go tell them the kingdom of heaven is at hand, you know, or Matthew 3:2, you know. So we know that that's the message at the heart of what they're saying. They may not know exactly how they're going to phrase it or whatever, but he says, you know, it wasn't said in the show, but it's said in the Gospels that the Holy Spirit will give you utterance when it's time for you to have utterance, you know. So it's so don't worry about what you're going to say. Just go and go, you know. And so it was a very powerful scene, and I'm excited to see where this goes from there. Yeah,
I think it's a great teaching, again, evangelical tool for even Christians today, that they can listen to that and they can take it for themselves, because there's, you know, what is it? Only 5% of Christians today witness to any other person. And 95% of Christians, if it were illegal tomorrow to be a Christian, would they even arrest you? Would anyone even know you're a Christian?
Yeah, I like that. You know, would you go to jail for being a Christian if someone just came in your house? Would they know? Would they be able to tell a difference?
Would know. Would even your coworkers, your coworkers at work know? Would they turn you in? Would your own family know? Do your neighbors, do your next door neighbors know that you're a Christian? The people that see you every day that interact with you, do they have any clue that you're a believer? And if they don't, that's not good. Well, I don't know what to say. I don't know what I didn't.
Well, neither did the apostles.
I did, and that's what that whole conversation is so timeless. The same, but they would have had the same questions. And if you've got questions and you're asking those questions, I get you're not any different than the apostles would have been at that time. It is a timeless, ageless, everyone for 2,000 years. When they've got born again and they're told, all right, you're now commissioned to go out and preach the gospel. It is everyone's responsibility to go out and touch the people that God's bringing across your path. You're going to have those questions, and that is your answer.
And I love that there's no training method. Jesus doesn't go, all right, line up. I'm going to show you how to do this. You know, let's
on the job training.
Let's practice. Let's practice. Matthew, what will you say when you come across someone? None of that was happening, which I appreciated.
Let's do some role playing.
Yeah, some of that. So another thing that got brought up, a major storyline of that conversation was about the money, because Jesus said, go without any money, in your pocket. You know, go and trust God. And he explains it like, I need you to go and do something by putting your entire faith in me and in God. Like, you need to go to a new town without a place to sleep, without a food in your pocket. And no cinnamon cookies from Grandma, James and John. You know, like, you have to go and trust and just believe that God's going to provide for you on this journey. And of course, that sort of gets it. Well, what are you sure? Like, and Judas is like, well, we need the money, and I've got some ideas. And he brings up, and then they nominate Matthew at first to start, overseeing the ministry funds. And this is probably going to become obviously a bigger thread down the road. We're going to see many stories in the Gospels talk about sort of the money bag, and so. I like what they did here with Matthew. Matthew's like, I'm not touching that bag ever again, bro. I'm not doing it.
Well, it's kind of his personal arc where he's decided to turn. He's as many Christians, especially newly born, this whole that things have changed, and he sees you know, there it says that the law is, you know, reflection, that, you know, we know that we're sinners by looking at the law, that he realizes what a sinner he was and what he's done, and he is so now disgusted with his past that he doesn't, right now it is too, he doesn't want to, it's just too close to home.
Plus, he's
handling the money is too much.
Yeah,
it's just too close to home right now. Like, that is part. Yeah, he wants to forget his past. He wants to. Yeah, it's just it's too much right now because he's so disgusted with himself, and he's so disgusted with what he's done, and the whole idea of all that makes him sick, and so, which is, you know, it's such an interesting character development, and I like the way they wrote that in, and whether that's why they ever, you know, Judas was
again
the money changer.
We're just making stories.
I like it, but I like it.
Again, I don't care. It doesn't bother me at all.
Oh, of course not.
Judas gets nominated ultimately, so he's now going to take care of the money, which we come to know in the Bible is that he's holding the money, and so but then that's it. You know, no training lesson, and it's the meeting's adjourned. Go get your bags.
Yeah.
You know, and then we see a scene with Peter and Eden where she's upset because they weren't going to have a baby, and so this starts Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, just starts the conversation between, like, will they be able to have a baby? Will this be part of their journey? How will it affect them? You know, and you saw lots of scenes.
Do you think that's why she was upset, though?
I think because she wants a baby. Yes, I think yes, because I think that you wouldn't bring up a pregnancy storyline without that being the crutch of it. Maybe not.
I think that it was. I think that at first, I thought that a little bit, and then I think they explained it a little bit with the dialogue, and. So to go back to all that and their reactions, I never, when reading the Gospels of them when Jesus sent them out 2 by 2, did it ever occur to me that maybe that they would be freaking out, that they thought they would be getting arrested by going into the towns and proclaiming Jesus is coming. Because that was just basically, I want you to go ahead, prepare the way, give them the message that, you know, they're basically little John the Baptist now. Yeah. They're out there, you're going to be the forerunners to go in the cities and prepare the city that Jesus is going to come to this city and preach. He is the Messiah. He, you know, and by, you know, in his name we can heal the sick, and we're going to do wonders to confirm that when Jesus comes, he coming in power and authority. And so I never thought that maybe that they would actually be freaking out that they might actually get arrested like John the Baptist or lose their head or the persecution.
So you think that's why Eden was upset?
Correct. I think that she was more worried about the fact that they were going to go out there alone, that they're going to go out. And right now they've been hiding behind Jesus. If anything was going to happen, it was probably going to happen. But Peter says
this doesn't mess up our timeline. Everything will be fine. He says that to her. She's like,
about having a baby. Yeah. And that's why she's upset about the persecution.
No, I think she's upset about not getting the baby fast enough.
Yeah, I don't know. Could be a mixture, but I think that it's. I think she's worried for him. I think that.
Oh, of course she's worried.
I think she thought he's home now, he's safe. I have him here. He's not, you know, and now he's got to leave again. Yeah. Now he's leaving, and he's going to be in more danger than he was before. And so I think I don't know. I think it was a mixture of things.
They didn't show her face when that scene was coming up when they were talking. Sure. They showed the apostles' faces when they were worried about Ed, you know, getting hurt and things like that. And but time will tell on that one. After they disperse, though, Kevin, this big scene with little James, where little James comes and he asks for healing, and he says, why haven't I been healed yet? How am I supposed to walk this long way? How am I supposed to keep up with everybody else? You know, how am I supposed to share the gospel when I look at me? I'm having my own issues, and you know, what kind of salt and light is for somebody like you know, who's dealt with you know, lifelong affliction. You know, how did that scene play for you, and what were your thoughts on it?
That was a hard scene to watch. Yeah, that was really hard. It's just because it was way too close to home for me. Yeah, and it's just conversations that I've had with the Lord, and it's just I could easily have been. I mean, I could have, if I hadn't already said those words. Like,
it's like you were putting yourself in his shoes. Right?
Oh yeah, I could identify. Like, you know, he did a great job, and whether or not he's in real life. Had a lifelong condition. I don't know. I can't tell. Like, you know.
Yeah, I don't know.
But
either way.
Yeah. So yeah, it was really. I It was really, I had to like kind of like pull away like a little bit, like I can't watch this. Like,
oh really? It was that difficult for you, huh?
mm-hmm.
To even just, did you feel like the writing? Because this was not something from scripture they pulled from, and I'd even read on some sort of comment or post that maybe Dallas or somebody else from The Chosen had put up about like this was their answer to a very difficult question.
That's right.
You know,
and it's very difficult because
yeah,
people. The why it's so difficult is that I don't know how many people could truly really identify with what little James was talking about.
It's very difficult to understand if you don't have it.
If you're not, if you know, there are people that, you know, what you've gone through addictions, or people have made bad life choices, or there are things, and maybe addiction in one way can be a very similar affliction. But when, you know, there's one thing when you're in bondage because of bad decisions or just a sin nature, but it's another thing when your physical body is a prison.
Yeah.
When you're in a prison that you cannot get out of, and that you have to live with every single day, and it's not your fault. You didn't do anything to ask for it, and it affects every moment of every day of your life, and it becomes, you know, a lot of times your own identity. And so when he comes to Jesus, you know, so Jesus picks, you know, and he, you know, cleverly, you know, here, and The Chosen, you know, pairing, who would Jesus pick to pair people up? So he's going to pick Matthew, the neurotic, who was a betrayer, a flip side of a zealot.
Yeah,
he was a betrayer of a
potential target.
By the way, we didn't tell the zealot of the group that Matthew was a tax collector, a traitor. Where the zealots are, the word zealot is, you know, you're over the board, you know, like people call us Jesus freaks. Like he's
in the way God describes us wanting to pray as well, like zealous prayers. You know,
yes. So he's going to pick the betrayer of the Jews with the zealot of the Jews. You two, and everyone's like, oh my God, he's going to kill Matthew. Yeah. Like, are you sure?
Even like, Peter's has own trouble with him. Like,
I'm bad enough. You're going to put him with the zealot who's like trained as a lethal weapon, could snap his neck while he's sleeping and not even know it. Like, you know, this guy, take him out with one swing.
Because remember, they just met recently.
That's why, like, you know, like, oh, we didn't tell you. Probably because we were afraid you would kill him. But by the way, this is, you know, and Jesus is like, he used to be, but none of you are the way you used to be, and
you're all different.
And so then he picks the physically weakest, littlest, the disabled person with the tallest, biggest, you know, Big James, who, you know, physically, at least in The Chosen, is the biggest one of the group and seemed to be the one that would, you know, other than the zealot, you know, the one that's most physically capable.
Yeah.
You know, the one that could walk the fastest, run the fastest, probably do a lot of physical labor without a problem.
Yeah.
And picks, and I'm going to pair you with the guy that can barely keep up with the women. And the women could outwalk you, and the women could outdo you, and he's now got to keep up with the strongest guy of the group. I know, me personally, like, I get, like, he is not happy with Jesus. Yeah, like, are you kidding me?
Did you see his face in the room when he was getting, like,
when he was big? Yeah, he was mortified.
Yeah, when Jesus was describing that they're all going to go out, and you saw little James, like, his head was hanging at the like everybody else is looking at Jesus. Yeah. He's the only one with sort of his head down.
He's mortified.
And so it sets up this scene perfectly. Yeah. That he's like, what the heck?
I knew where it was going, but when he went to him, and he's, you know, he went to him because, you know, he's mad. You know, he's confused, and he's hurt, and because he doesn't know why he's not healed yet. And it's hard. It's really hard to go down the road. But I all I can say is that I really appreciated their explanation to him. You know, because I think you cannot. It is a hard question, and you cannot paint a broad brush and say this is what Jesus' explanation to little James, as biblically correct as it could be. I think for that situation. you can't paint a brush and say this is the case for every single person and why they're not healed. Or, and say, well, this is the explanation. And that's why it's such a hard, because I think in every, it's a relationship, and everyone that's in a position that is believing God for a miracle, healing in their body, they just have to go to the Lord like little James did and say, Lord, between you and me, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And let God answer that, because it could be a host of reasons. And it's not just what Jesus, but what I appreciated of what the writers in Dallas did not say. It's not so much what I appreciated he did say. I appreciate what he did not say. And he did not say, well, I gave this to you, or this is to teach you a lesson. It was not like, because unfortunately there's a lot of bad teachers out there. A lot of bad, lazy theological leaders that will tell you garbage like, well, God gives you this sickness to keep you humble. God made you sick or made you that way to teach you a lesson. God somehow, that God's the sinner here. God does not do any of those. That all sickness, all disease, all disabilities come from the kingdom of hell. They all come from sin, and they all come from the devil. God does not make anyone sick. He does not make anyone crippled. He does not give anyone any kind of disability to teach you some kind of lesson. That is not biblically accurate. It is always God's will to heal. And I even love that at the end, he gives him a hug and says, you will be healed.
Yeah.
Like,
that was so good. It was such
like,
a good moment. Yeah.
This is my will for you. It's not changed. And so, yeah. So I liked that the Chosen did not make some crazy, ridiculous explanation.
I thought it was really good.
That this is why you are living this way, and it's to teach you some kind of lesson, or that's like it was God put that on him. God did not put that on him.
Yeah.
But so it was good, but it's definitely it's definitely a hard thing to watch.
Well, hopefully that scene can be a good takeaway for others who maybe, have a question. Like you said, you've had many conversations with the Lord about it. Maybe there are people who have not had conversations with the Lord about it, but they've dealt with it, and so this is going to
that they've never really, or that they're mad at God, because that's the other thing, and that you can't allow bitterness or to blame God, and let the devil, use that as a wedge between your relationship with the Lord and yourself. To let bitterness grab hold of your heart. You cannot allow that. You have to fight against it, and it is a fight. You have to, which is why I appreciate James's. I say, because I can see in his face, and I believe that whether the actor was pulling from a source, a real life experience, or they coached him or whatever, but I could see it he's mad that he's like, you not only have you not healed me yet, but you're gonna humiliate me or put me with a guy that is like
Olympic.
The thing that I once he's like, it's like this billboard of what I'm not. I'm going to remind you every day of what you're not and what you can't do. And you're going to go with the guy that can do all the things that you wish you could do, but you'll never be, And that's just, that's like salt in the wound for someone that's, struggling with that. I get it. Like, it's, you just coming to Jesus with this hurt and frustration and so many questions. And he's like, hi. It's just, it was good. And I think hopefully it will help people, that God will anoint it and help others that can watch it and get through it and let that minister to them, that Jesus did not give that to you. He does want to remove it, but there's his ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than ours. There's many different reasons. And I do believe that, for that, that's, some of it's character development. Some of it's I love these. It's I can trust you. But he didn't give it to him. He just, I haven't healed you yet because I can trust you. There's purpose in the pain sometimes that we can't see or don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
great way to end this show. And I don't know when the next episode comes out. Maybe it's been announced and I haven't heard it, or maybe it's just have yet to be announced. But
last I heard, I think that this when it comes back out of theaters, then I think around Christmas time, then these 2 episodes will be released, and then I think not until the end of the year will the rest of the episodes start getting released.
Well, regardless of when they start coming out, we'll continue to cover them. We'll also try and answer any questions you guys have in the comments. If you have some to leave, we can do some follow-up videos on any questions or anything or any takeaways you guys have. We can try and keep the community growing and building to be able to talk about The Chosen with everybody else who's watching it, just like we are. Also, you know, do you think like we're gonna see all these trips? Do you think that's what's coming up next? Do you think we're gonna get an episode of everybody in their different locations, or do you think that they'll sort of fast forward?
I think this is going to be a unique season. I really think that you might see the bulk of the season of them all maybe splitting up, and maybe at the end of the season they'll come back together
for Loaves and Fishes.
And, you know, he replies like, I tell little James, I can't wait to hear all your stories.
Yeah, we don't see Jesus
of all
for a
the
couple
miracles
episodes.
You do.
Yeah. It'll be exciting to see some of these guys perform some miracles and see how that impacts them or the people around them. See the group grow, not the 12 grow, but the people following them, and it gets bigger, bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So thanks for watching today's show with us, and we pray that you discover a future and a hope for your life today.